All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Highly Unlikely with Josh and Jenaye. And I am so excited for today.
Me too.
Because one of the people I just love is here. And the person that I love the most is not here, but she's doing Jenaye things. She's in high demand.
Yeah, she is.
She's traveling today on her way home. I've had the kids alone for 1, 2, 3 days. So praise the Lord. It's coming to an end. But our guest today is Pastor Noah Herrin.
Yeah.
And that's not Herring. That's Noah Herrin at Noah Herrin. You should follow him on Instagram. It's one of the best follows that you'll have. But Noah has a church in Nashville called Way Church.
Yeah.
He is a huge voice to the next generation, just speaking to Gen Z and our teenagers and young adults that are coming up. And what else is great about you? Has a great family that I'll let him tell you about. So Noah, welcome to the podcast. I'm sorry Jenaye's not here. She wishes that she could be, but
I'm so
glad. So glad you're here.
Thank you, Pastor Josh. Look up to you guys so much. And I don't get nervous to be on podcasts, but this is like the most beautiful podcast background I've ever seen. I feel like I should have smarter things to say. Hopefully this goes well.
I should shout out whoever made it, but I can't
It's
remember.
beautiful.
Josh Detweiler, our worship guy.
Okay.
On the side, he creates beautiful things.
Man of many talents. No, honored to be here. Definitely amazing family. Married to Maddie. We have 2 kids. Lion, who is 3, and our daughter, Mila, is 1.5 years.
Come on.
Yeah. My wife is ready for a 3rd. She wants 4. I wanted 2. We'll probably compromise and have 4.
I'm not going to lie. We were going to have 5.
Okay.
And then we had 2 and we were like, let's have 4. And then we had our 3rd and we were both like tapping out. So I was like, I'm too tired to have another one.
I'm too tired too. She's not. She is ready.
She's ready to go.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. So she wanted 4.
Yeah. She's wanted 4 since we met. She was like, I want to have 4 kids one day. I hope you're cool with that if we get married. It's like, all right, maybe I'll change your mind. No.
She's going to win.
If anything, she sees families with 6 kids at the park and she's like, that could be us. I'm like, no, it's not going to be us.
Okay. I do feel like that'd be really cool once you're old. I think right
once
now
they're older,
we're just seeing the little kid season too up close to enjoy that, I think. But some people love it.
I'm like, we have a church plant. That's like another 1.5 kids.
Yeah, that's true.
So maybe I'll feel different in a couple of years, but I love our kids. It's the biggest blessing ever, but I'm tired. Yeah. If I look tired, I am.
I think it's Lion's birthday today, right?
It is Lion's birthday.
Come on.
We had a birthday party last weekend. His best friends, it was easier for them and the grandparents to be in town last weekend. So I feel bad that I'm not with him, but not as bad because we got to celebrate it.
You did the party?
Yeah, but we're going to celebrate tomorrow too. His mom bought some s'mores, and he's a big marshmallow guy. We talked before this. So anything with marshmallows, he's about that.
Come on. That's so cool. Well, thanks for coming.
It's honored.
On his birthday.
Honored to be here.
So cool. Tell us about Way Church.
Yeah, we launched a church in Nashville. We are 1 mile from Broadway, right next to the Tennessee Titans Stadium. We launched September of 23, so we just celebrated 1 year last month.
Wow.
And it's been amazing. It's been the wildest 13 months. Honestly, 2 years, because we moved a year earlier to start building a team. And so as of today, we've seen 382 first-time salvations.
Wow.
We have 31 small groups meeting around the city. And just some of the most beautiful people. Just personally, we've never had community like we have right now. We were traveling evangelists before we started the church, and that was an amazing season, but you miss out on a lot of things when you're gone every single week, multiple times. And one of the things we missed out on was community. And now we have just some of the most rich relationships we could have ever asked for. And we've only been there for 2 years. And so we're really excited about what God's doing. We need a building. So if anyone listening is friends with anybody who owns buildings in Nashville, I'd love to be your friend. But it's been awesome.
Yeah, you were telling me about just the lease payments in Nashville. It's just
Crazy.
a totally different world than
It's crazy.
up here in the Wild West.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very expensive and high demand.
Yeah.
Because all these businesses come in to Nashville, from other places. But then on top of that, all the spaces that would be used for churches are used for concerts because it's, country music capital of the world.
Right.
So you get a lot more money from a concert than you do a church. And so the space is hard to find.
Wow.
We're going to find it.
God's going to provide.
Absolutely.
He always does.
Yep.
Makes it happen. Okay, so Way Church. The other thing I wanted to mention, I had a number in my mind, but you're also an author.
Yeah.
And so Noah has a great book. Why don't you tell everybody about the book and even kind of where it came from in your heart?
Yeah. So it's called Holy Habits. And I mentioned being a full-time evangelist before planting Way Church. A lot of what I was doing at that time was youth. I would say now it's like 50-50.
How many years did you travel?
I traveled full-time for 2.5 years,
Okay.
but I was traveling before then kind of like, just kind of like I am now, just a couple, maybe 2 or 3 times a month. But I did a lot of youth stuff in that season. And I spoke at a youth conference in Florida, amazing youth conference. And there was just this guy that I locked in on during this event. He responded on a night where I preached about repenting of sin and trying to find freedom in Christ. And there were hundreds of students who came down, but this one guy, like you could just see like the Lord was moving. And so during the altar moment, I came down off the stage and I started praying with this guy. And like mid prayer, this dude just started jumping. I mean, like going crazy. Like he went from like weeping to like the joy of the Lord. And he shared with me like he felt like God had set him free from a really long addiction to pornography. He's probably like 20-year-old college student, and just felt like God had set him free. And it really marked me as like this moment of like, man, this is why I do what I do. Like God used me to, share a truth to him that led to an encounter with God. Like I want to remember this moment, for some of the not so fun days.
For sure.
Well, a year later, I got asked to come back to the same place. And I was thinking like, I can't wait to see this guy. Like, I can't wait to hear how his life has been the last year. And I found him. And I saw him in the lobby, and he immediately looked away. And it was like this look away out of shame. And my heart just like sank because I could assume why that was. And so I didn't like chase him down. It's like big lobby, but I just was like thinking about him. And then after the service was over, my wife and I were walking to our car. And because he was a college student there, he was actually there serving at the conference, and he was helping tear down. I saw him and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to run over there. And sure enough, he just started crying. And he was like, I know what you want to know and why, you're talking to me, but I'm still struggling with it. And just like hearing his genuine heartbreak and like shame in that moment, it really messed with me. And I just started like asking the question, why is it that so many Christians can sing about freedom but not experience it? Like, why is it that you can follow Christ for a decade, for 2 decades, for 3 decades? I personally know a great man who loves the Lord, who struggled with an addiction for 60 years, the same addiction that he had before he followed Christ. Like, why is that? And I came to this conclusion biblically that an encounter with Jesus will set you free, but your habits with Jesus keep you free.
Oh.
And that was the thesis for the book. It was like, if you want to break the cycle of sin in your life, Jesus has to be more beautiful than your sin. And if Jesus is going to be more beautiful than your sin, you've got to routinely figure out a way to place yourself in front of Jesus. And so that was what changed my life. So it really is like a book of like these little habits that just changed my relationship with Jesus and led to a freedom for me from alcoholism, freedom for me from pornography and other things. But so that's the book. It came from that guy, and I wrote it hoping that it would help like people like that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy Habits.
That's
Noah Herrin. grab it wherever you can get
Thanks,
it. It's a
man.
good read.
Thank you.
So those, totally lost my train of thought, but holy habits. Oh, Lord, help me. This is where we need Jenaye, man. This is where we need Jenaye. I don't know what it was, but people can get it wherever they want to, pick it up on Amazon or something like that. You're going to write again, hopefully, and continue to just share. Why don't you tell everybody? I caught a little of this. Noah's here preaching at our youth conference. I was listening in and I heard you share a little bit of your story and you just alluded to it, but I know it's easy like to look at you from the outside and you have a beautiful family.
Thanks.
Like you share great stuff on social media, but I just know there's a real person that loves people behind all that.
Thanks.
And so do you want to just share a little bit of your story of where you came out of?
Yeah. So grew up amazing family. My grandfather was a pastor. My dad's a pastor. My parents love the Lord. Pastored a larger church growing up, and I felt a lot of pressure as a kid, even as a young kid, to act a certain way beyond all those things. Some stuff happened at the church, not with my parents, but some staff members that kind of made me question, is this real? And then that pressure kind of intensified as the church grew a little bit, where I just felt man, when I'm at church, I have to be someone that's not me. And by the time I was in 9th grade, I just kind of decided this is not for me. And so really from the time I was 9th grade till my end of my junior year of college, I was running from the Lord, was in a relationship that was not a holy one, had a real struggle with alcohol and a 6-year pornography addiction. And I reached this point my junior year where I kept just telling myself the emptiness that I'm feeling right now is going to go away when I get the next thing. And I just had kept doing that all throughout college and nothing was filling that. It was just getting emptier. And my roommate in college ended up being the best man in our wedding. He's an amazing dude. His name's Tyler. And he was a follower of Jesus the whole time and would regularly have these great combos with me to kind of try to get us going in that direction. But I was a pastor's kid. So I was I know what you're doing, bro. This is the old Kirk Cameron, conversation starter you're doing. And one time, junior year, he sent me a clip of Pastor Judah Smith. And he was like, hey, I know you don't want to watch a sermon. So I edited this 4-minute story of him playing golf with his wife because he knew I liked golf. He's like, you're going to think this is hilarious. Just watch this video. And so I watched this 4-minute clip and he was right. I was dying laughing. Judah is hilarious.
When I wanted to learn how to preach, I watched Judah Smith sermons and just figured out how he takes people on a journey and trying to mimic it. Yeah, he's brilliant. One
of the best communicators on the planet, preaching or not. So I watched the 4-minute clip. I'm like, there's no way that guy's a pastor. I've never heard someone that funny. So then I'm like, I got to find the rest of this video. So I'm on YouTube by myself in our college apartment and find the full sermon. And 35 minutes later, I'm weeping, giving my life to Jesus. And so that was 21. And then about 6 weeks later, I started a Bible study and felt like that was what God was asking me to do. And it was just some guys on the basketball team at first. And that Bible study started meeting weekly and it started growing. And eventually it turned into a college ministry of about 700 college students that were gathering to listen to me preach stolen Judah Smith sermons.
Yeah, let's go.
That was how I got in ministry. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I got 2 questions. One is, what were your parents doing?
Yeah.
I mean, just for even parents that are listening who their kids walked away, or that's one thing we've been working on as a church is that, I don't want to call it a pipeline, but moving our kids into youth, into young adults, into adults, or into our college, and not having this attrition, where they're falling off. And but what does a parent do if that's happened?
So I think part of the time my parents didn't know what was going on. When I lived in the house, like, it was a non-negotiable. I was going to church. You know what I mean? And so, and I knew that that wasn't even like a conversation starter. So I would do enough for where but I think they knew, like they knew that there was other stuff going on. They just didn't really know what to do. And this is what I give my parents so much credit for, is they very easily could have latched right there. And instead, they just continued to love me. And like, there were definitely hard conversations that they had. I remember I blew curfew and got into some stuff one time. And it was like a month of being grounded during like prime, you don't want to be grounded season of a high schooler's life. So that we definitely butted heads, but they just kind of gave me space to figure some things out. And I think what that allowed me to feel is when I was ready to come back, I didn't feel this like I hate my parents. I felt this like deep, genuine love, and like they're there for me. Like they've been waiting for this to happen. Like I just felt it. And so, I would say it's like, now as a dad, I'm thinking, man, what if Lion had gone through that? And I think I would want to handle it the way my parents did and be like, I'm going to keep trying to fall in love with Jesus and let my kids see this. And I'm going to speak truth when the Holy Spirit gives me opportunities, but I'm going to let them figure out who Jesus is also, you know, and not try to force the relationship.
Yeah, I feel like that's it. Like they were willing to ground you and like hold the line, but also still open to like conversations and loving you. And I think that if I walked through that too, that'd be that same tension, you know, that I would try to hold.
Yeah.
What about kids who maybe aren't, you know, don't have your story?
Yeah.
And they've been in church their whole life.
Yeah.
And wonder about the experience out there. Yeah. You know, or wish they had a 4-year stint where they went and just explored, like maybe they're missing out on something.
Yeah.
And, like often they'll say, I don't really have a testimony. Like, you know, I've known Jesus my whole life. Yeah. Like, what do you say to those kids?
Yeah, man, we talked about this with some of the students today. Just how, like, I think the way we're wired is like, even if we believe God loves us, we'll hear about the things that we're not supposed to do as a Christian or like the rules. And we're like, man, you know, is God giving me those rules because he wants to keep me from something? And now on the other side, I know he wanted to keep me for something, you know, and that like, you want to break the rules to see if there's something better. And what I've learned through my experience is like, no, like the better is God's design. And like the no is always because of a better yes. You know, like just really practically, like the girl that I dated in college, like she was an amazing girl. Like I'm pretty sure that she has her own family now. And like, I'm so happy for her. But like the way that we lived our life, like it was a constant cycle of fear and shame. And like when I married Maddie and like did it the way that the Lord designed, I've never felt an ounce of those feelings, you know? It's just like freedom and like joy and love. And so, yeah, I would just say like those rules that you're tempted to break are not going to satisfy you. And God's design absolutely will every single area of your life.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I listened to a little bit of the panel that you were on too. And man, the one thing that I wish somebody would have told me at a young age kind of on that topic is like your desire isn't bad. Like whether it's sexual desire or a desire for risk and adventure or the desire to explore, like don't condemn that. And I think a lot of even like purity culture people talk about, but a lot of it just condemn desire. Like you shouldn't think this way. You shouldn't feel this way. You shouldn't be this way. But I think the truth is that God made you and created you full of desire and adventure and risk and a desire to explore and to experience things. But then he said, now steward it. So he's not saying don't have it. He's saying steward it. And if you steward it the right way, it'll bring life. If you steward it in the wrong things, it'll bring death. And so I just kind of, at one point was just like, I'm a person full of desire and I don't have to be ashamed of desire. I just have to steward it
That's
in the
great.
spaces where God has told me that I can allow it to run. And I think even that's what you've done, where it's like, man, you have all these things, but you now are using that as like a voice in the wilderness of this next generation,
So,
to go plant a church. Like you have to have a sense of desire and expectation and adventure to even go do that. So if you put it in the right spaces, it can be a huge blessing.
Absolutely.
But we condemn it a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Got to point in the right direction. For sure. I think about like, there's all these, the Bible is just filled with stories of people like that, right? Like I always think about Paul, and just like the dude was clearly gifted in a lot of things to work his way up in that culture of religious leaders, and going in the wrong.
He reigned in more than one domain.
Yeah. And then just, one encounter and points it the other way. And now half of our New Testament's written by that guy.
Right.
So
it's incredible.
Yeah.
So tell me, I feel like the space of spiritual disciplines is kind of weird right now. Like, and in that nobody wants to be too legalistic, but everybody understands that like spiritual disciplines have a space in our lives. So we should pray, but God loves you, so you don't have to pray.
For sure.
Like it's this whole, like you should read your Bible, but don't get legalistic and have to read a chapter a day. Cause there's just this whole conversation. And so tell me how, like these holy habits, what are they? Or give me some examples, and then how have you implemented them in your whole life, your own life?
So I love that you like brought up that, because our church is a very young church demographically for the most part. And there's so many different views on spiritual disciplines represented even in our own church. And I think you have to start with like the point of the discipline, the point of the habit is not the habit. The point of the habit is the person that you meet with through the habit.
So it's like a means to an end.
It's a means to an end. So it's like Jesus, his goal was not for you to fall in love with prayer. His goal was for you to fall in love with him. But prayer is one of the ways that you can fall in love with him. And so like I've even the last few weeks at our church, like I've preached over and over and over again that the way to follow Jesus is not to perform better, it's to fall in love. If you fall in love, you'll perform better. And so as a Christian, we shouldn't be asking like, what would make me a better Christian? Like that is a horrible place to start. It's just, what would make me fall in love with Jesus more? And so even when thinking about like habits to implement, it's like, which one of these habits do I feel and see God the most clearly? For me, one of the habits is prayer, but the most intimidating scripture in the Bible for me was pray without ceasing. Because I was like,
I will fall short.
I will fall short. And in fact, there was one time I was like, I just want to see how long I can pray. This is a true story. I started my stopwatch. This was like right after I'd given my life to Jesus. I started my stopwatch and I just started praying. And I called down heaven. And when I looked at my stopwatch, it was like 2 minutes and 22 seconds. And I was like, how do people pray without ceasing?
Yeah.
And so in the book, I talk about this and I end with like, this is the habit that changed my life when it comes to prayer. It's called the 1 minute prayer. And so instead of being someone who's like, I'm going to pray for 3 hours tomorrow morning because that'll make me closer to God. For me, that would not work. I'd be like, I am dreading this. So I implemented this 1 minute prayer where after everything on my calendar, I take 1 minute just to talk to God. So like in the mornings, I go for a run. As soon as my run's over, I just take 60 seconds to talk to the Lord. Then I go get ready for the day, wake the kids up, make them breakfast. I'm about to leave the house. I'm in my car. It takes 60 seconds to talk to the Lord. And it's a way for me to talk to the Lord all throughout the day. And I look forward to it. And over time, like I found myself praying longer. And over time, I found myself praying in the middle of things because it's like this habit that has caused me to fall in love with talking with Jesus. And so like there are some habits in the book that people might read about, like Sabbath, and be like, oh, I'm out on that. I couldn't do that. And I put these like little modifiers in there of like, well, try it this way and see if like if that makes you fall in love with Jesus, almost like a intro level.
Yeah. Was there, I think you told me one time privately, like that there was a book that kind of inspired you towards habits even at a younger age.
Yep.
and maybe helped inspire some of what you wrote about. So
Totally.
this wasn't just a thing, like a revelation that Noah
Yeah.
came upon. This has been probably something even as like a church kid that you had to reconcile.
Yeah.
Like, what do these habits look like in my life? And so
Yeah.
what's been the difference in your own life before the book, after the book?
Yeah. The book that I shared with you is called The Celebration of Discipline by Richard Foster.
I think we use that in our Midwest Leadership College programming.
It's my favorite
sure.
book I've
Yeah,
ever read.
it's beautiful.
I love it. And it was written, I believe it was written in like the 90s, maybe even the 80s. And it's written in a way that like my generation is probably not going to read. Just the way it flows and stuff.
Yeah.
And so what I tried to do is take what I learned from that book and combine it with what I learned with falling in love with Jesus and write a newer version of it, kind of. And so I would say what's changed is when I first read that book, it made me want to try harder. Like it made me want to beat myself up when I failed or when I didn't spend enough time in the Bible. What has changed is now I feel like I see what his point was. And it was that, man, these habits, like the goal of them is to get you to Jesus. The goal of them is to get you to fall in love with Jesus. And so like I used to hear, talking about Pastor Judah, I interned for him in 2017.
I didn't know that.
And he used to talk about how he was a verse a day guy. And I was like, there's no way you read one verse out of the Bible a day. Like I've heard you preach. It's so good. There's no way you do that. And what I think I know now is that for him in that season of his life, a verse a day meditated on was how he saw Jesus. It's what made him fall in love with Jesus. And I'm sure that's changed and it's been, an hour a day in some seasons and a verse a day in others. But I think that's what people have to figure out. I do think that scripture is clear that discipline is something that we should love and that we should seek. And so I'm not advocating for, well, I'll just do what I want when I want. And like, I think you need rhythms to get in the presence of God, but I think the rhythms can change.
Yeah. That's awesome. I actually think depending on what your story is matters too, because if you're a new follower of Jesus, like there's a certain way that you should read the Bible.
Yeah.
And hopefully an appetite to take on more than a verse a day. Totally. Not that you have to, but if you've never read it before, you're going to be like, I don't just want to read that Jairus had a problem. I want to know what happened at the end of the story.
Totally.
I was raised in the Word all the time, and it was just kind of ever present in our lives. And so for me, it was hard to slow down and just like take the Bible slower or to sit and study it. Yeah. Because I was just so used to hearing it all the time. So I think depending on what your story is too, can change how you read it. Totally. I think for the last couple of years this has been true, but I read the whole Bible in 30 days. Have you heard of this? The Shred, yeah. And every January I try to shred. Wow. See, now I've never told people this, and now I've said it twice in a week, where I feel like now every January people are going to be like, are you shredding right now? But it's just been like a great habit because I feel like you get the whole Bible in a quick overview.
So awesome.
But I'm literally, I listen to it and I'll be putting my kid to bed and have one AirPod in, trying to be present with them, but also like it's hours every day to try to do it. And then the rest of the year, I'm just very like not systematic about how I do it. Sometimes, well, whatever, it doesn't even matter, but I go to it just not in a systematic way. And so I think everybody just has to figure out, what does the expression of any one of these habits look like in my life, and in my story? Absolutely. I got to ask you one question, because every time I listen to podcasts like this, I wish that the person hosting it would ask the question. Yeah. Because I know there's some people that want to write, myself included. Yeah. And so give us like the crash course real quick, as crash as you can. Yeah. On like how to write. Yeah. And then later, I'm going to ask you harder questions about how to write. Okay, so I have two books that I've written so far. One was self-published. I don't think that one's that good. I think Holy Habits is decent. That one was through a publisher, and that publisher asked me to do two more. So I have another one that will come out in about 9 months that I just finished the writing process with.
And I feel so much better about how I wrote that one than I did Holy Habits. So I think like the more you write, just the more confident you get.
Yeah.
But I would say what helped me the most was breaking up, like, okay, they want me to write 45,000 words. Like that's kind of the goal for this book I just wrote. Okay, they gave me 6 months to do it. How many words a week is that? And let me stop focusing on like this massive project and let me just write the best 2,000 words that I can this week. And that helped so much because there's so many days when you sit down to write and you're like, this is horrible. Like I just stared at a blank page for the whole hour that I had, you know, or like worse, I just typed 6 pages and I'm going to throw all 6 pages in the trash.
Yeah.
Like that's the worst. But then there are other days because you started the discipline of I'm going to write for an hour every morning or whatever your discipline ends up being, where it just flows and you're like, I'm in the zone. I'm canceling what I have for the next 2 hours because I'm in the zone right now and I just got to go. With my first 2 books, I was very like feel oriented and less discipline oriented to go with the rest of the theme of this conversation. And so it was like, do I feel like writing today? I won't. Or do I feel like writing today? Yeah. And then it didn't end up being that good. And so I just felt like it felt more rushed at the end. I didn't feel like I had as much like diligence in the process. This one, it was just that 1 hour a day for 6 months sitting down. By the time I got to the end, I was like, okay, I got everything out of this idea that I possibly could have, you know? And so just like knowing me, like I'm the smartest or the sharpest in the morning. And so it was like, I'm going to protect 1 hour in the morning and just write every day.
That was your time.
Yeah.
I think John Maxwell talks about, I think it was him. I know it was him. Who else would say this? The guy who's written like 90 books.
Yeah.
He just says, sharpen your axe every day, go out to the tree and take one swing.
Yeah.
So the problem is when you just hack and pretty soon your blade is dull and the other guy who's just taking one swing a day is going to catch you.
That's it.
You know?
Yep.
And so that's just great insight. So
thanks. I'm excited for your book.
I already know the title.
One.
This is the first time in my life where I felt like I have something to write about.
Come on.
Because people have asked me before if I was going to read or write, and I was like, I don't have anything to write about. I don't have anything to say yet. And now I feel like it's there.
Let's
go. I Googled the title. Nobody else has written it. So I think I got the corner on it.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Reserve it right now.
So you're going to mentor me, sometime this weekend. Let's see. Can you talk just for a couple of minutes about one of the reasons I love to follow you on social media is because of the stuff that you're talking about that's relevant to the next generation and even why we had you come up here. Well, for me, it was so I could hang out with you, but I guess you're also going to preach. But seriously, because you have just a great voice to the next generation and it shows in your content. It shows in the stuff that you're talking about. And I know that you're leading young adults now. And so it's fun to watch you continue to just kind of grow into how God is ultimately using you for his kingdom. So I'm trying to think of a more direct question, but what are the things right now maybe that every parent needs to know about like their teenager or a young adult in their life that maybe would not naturally come to them from their own experience? What is uniquely different for these kids that you preach to today?
Yeah. Oh man, I feel like there's so many directions I could go. I'm just going to spray at you for a second. I think every generation wants to belong. I think Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they sometimes feel like they belong places that they don't. Does that make sense?
You define Gen Z and Gen Alpha?
Yeah. So like Gen Z would be, I think, 26 and under right now. Like 27 actually, like 27 to like, I want to say it's like 17. And then Gen Alpha is like 17 and under, something like that. And I think that generation, like they crave belonging. And they sometimes feel like that belonging is being satisfied through things like social media, right? Like I liked that person's post. That means that we're friends. I watch those YouTube videos. They get me. Does that make sense? Like they're getting these little pieces of belonging from all these other places. Their soul is desperately craving belonging. It's one of the reasons why I really, really believe that the future of the church is hyper-local. So like a gathering with hyper-local communities inside the church where you can really belong, where you can really be known. And I think what has been cool our first year at our church is seeing some of these theories that I had about the next generation play out, where it's like, I'm here with my friend Wells, and we were talking at lunch, like, why do you think people come to Way Church? Like, there's a bunch of great churches in Nashville, and we're new, and there are a lot of reasons why you wouldn't want to come to our church because of that. And I think people are coming, some of these younger people are coming because they're finding that belonging. Like they're finding that connection with people. We made it one of our 3 values. Like we're committed to community. And I think like as a parent listening, like you need to know like your student really, really wants to belong. And whoever makes them feel like they belong the fastest and the most is going to get them. And so like the church, of course, like we're wanting them to not just like feel that belonging, but to know they belong because of Christ. But it's the world is trying to get them to feel that too, you know, in a million different ways. So like that's where my mind goes first. I think the other thing is like because of the social media kind of world that we live in, I think authenticity resonates more with the next generation than content. So it's like you could have the best content in the world, but if it doesn't feel authentic to you as the deliverer of that content, they're like, I'm out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's not enough to just have great content or to be a great parent. It's like you've got to figure out and pray through, how can I express this in a way where they see my heart? You know, they feel my heart. And I think that that's what's resonating, at least in my soul, with the community that we have in Nashville. Those 2 things. Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you a different question, but I was listening to a friend talk about when you have hard conversations with people.
Yeah.
And he's like, make sure that when you're talking about the content of the hard conversation, you can tell when people like check out or when they're hurt or when they're offended or when they're having a hard time with the content. And he goes, what we fail to do is pause the content and go, hang on a second. Hey, I said this at the beginning of the conversation and I'll say it again. I love you and I want the best for you, honestly. And I can see right now that like what we're talking about isn't sitting very good.
Yeah.
And so can we just talk about the context of the conversation again? Like I'm not trying to harm you.
That's great.
I'm trying to help you.
Yeah.
Reestablish that and then go back into the content. So even for a parent to go, I know some days you got content you want to get through with your kids. Like we're going to have a talk about something. Yeah. But just you got to like hold on to them through reestablishing the context of like, you belong, I care about you, I love you. I want the best for you. Yeah. You know? And absolutely. I think there's a lot of reasons that doesn't happen. And one of them is just like, we are always just like on the go and don't pause long enough for each other. Can you define belonging? Yeah. I think you used that word and like, what does it mean for somebody to belong? What registers in the soul of somebody to say,
I read this book. I just finished this book called The Culture Code. Have you heard of it?
Yes.
It's brilliant. I love it.
Who is it?
I can't remember the guy's name. I listened to it on Audible while I run in the mornings. And so, like, it was so distracting because every 30 seconds I'm like pulling my phone out while I'm running, trying to type notes. But I believe his definition resonates with me. And he says that belonging is when someone feels safe enough to be vulnerable with you because of the way you made them feel. So I belong when I feel safe enough to be vulnerable with you because you made me feel something that told me I could do that. And I think a byproduct of feeling that like he does this example of the culture of Google in the early days, and how Google was this little company and their leaders did two things really well. They created safety on the team, and they created crazy, challenging conversations. So like they were not afraid of confrontation. They did not do like sandwich compliments where it would be like, hey, you're like the best I've ever seen at this.
Where you don't even hear that because you know something else is coming.
Like they didn't do that. It was like, if you did something bad, it was like, hey, that was horrible. But they could do that because they'd built so much safety and like belonging. And the point of that chapter of the book, which really impacted me, was that the more you can get people to belong, the higher you can call them. So like if someone feels like they really belong and then you challenge them to be something greater, to do something greater, to do something difficult, they're going to jump. And that idea, I'm like, it like really unlocked something for me when thinking about even like discipling like guys at our church and leading our church into the future. Is like, if we can create a place where people feel I belong here, even if I haven't figured out how to follow Jesus yet. I belong here, even if I haven't figured out how to be on staff, you know, like a pastor would do. Then we can challenge them to go the rest of the way,
right?
You know, or our kids the same way,
right? The word that came to mind when you're talking about that and why we don't do it was insecurity.
Yeah,
because insecurity, I think a lot of people are insecure just because they're thinking about themselves more than other people. Or even, believe it or not, I get socially anxious. Like if I'm in large groups of people, I'm like, how quickly can I walk through? Like I didn't really develop that until later in life. And part of what helped me with it is I heard somebody talk about that and they said, if you make the conversation about the other person, or if you put the attention on other people when you're having those conversations, you will feel less like socially anxious. Sometimes you feel anxious because you're thinking about, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? Or how am I appearing right now? I think that's just a core part of belonging. And I think we have a lot of really insecure people who have no reason to be insecure. But if they would not think about them, and I'm not saying you're arrogant even or like conceited,
right?
But if you just not be so aware of yourself you become more aware of the person in front of you, not only would you feel less anxious or be less insecure, but you would also create belonging for more people.
So good.
And I think that's like, that is a generational, that could be a transformative.
Totally.
You know, for a lot of people.
It's a game changer.
Yeah.
Man.
So I think that creates a ton of belonging too, is just like seeing the person in front of you.
Absolutely. That Dale Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's like gold. I read that once a year just as like a refresher, and like half the book's about that. It feels like so good.
Yeah, it's so good. Okay. I have one problem, and that is that I always forget to do the question from the bowl at the beginning of these conversations. So...
question from the bowl.
But I'm not going to go home and tell Jenaye that I forgot the question from the bowl. We're going to hit it now.
Let's do it.
And make sure we cover it.
Okay.
So, and then
I love this idea. I want to steal this.
This will be our closer. Couple times, actually, there's podcasts going that we only did questions from the bowl.
That's awesome.
I don't know if you and Maddie do this, but Jenaye and I do conversation starters on our dates a lot.
Yeah.
And I think it's super fun.
It's awesome.
And you find out things about people.
I'm going to start doing this when people walk into my office. When I have an office one day. I don't have an office right now. It's a coffee shop.
It's a coffee shop. Yeah.
But I'm just going to have the bowl out. And anytime someone walks in, grab a card.
Seriously, belonging. Let me know something about you. What's the nicest thing anyone has ever done for you? It doesn't have to be anyone ever, but what's like one of the things that stands out?
Last year, my wife threw me a birthday party. And I don't even know why I'm emotional right now. I am. But that was just, I've never had someone do that for me. And she invited a bunch of people that mean a lot to me, and, you know, planned it out months in advance to make sure that they could be there. And
did you know about it?
No, I didn't have a clue. And so, that was like, just very, and like even the party itself, like what happened at the party was just like meaningful. And like, it wasn't just like, let's get together and have a meal. It was like really thoughtful. I'm like a huge words of affirmation guy. And she basically like curated like all these people that really mean a lot and then had them say like really meaningful things. And so, that's probably the nicest thing anyone's ever done for me. I still think about it a lot.
Yeah. That's so good. What a great answer.
Yeah.
I was going to answer, but I'm not going to, because that was such a good answer.
So tender.
It was so good.
Thanks, man.
Man, I think I'm just super grateful for you, honestly. And people kept asking me today, like, how do you know Noah? You know, and I joked with you that I followed you on social media before I ever even knew you. And I honestly do that intentionally because when I was the young adult pastor, we were reaching a lot of young adults because I think churches can be reflective of their leader, even in demographics. And man, I have embraced like, okay, I'm getting like Jenaye and I have kind of aged out of like, I was single when I started working at the church. Like they watched us get married. They watched us have kids. Now we have 3 kids. They're getting a little bit older. And I've just realized like, man, I can quickly lose, not like being relevant or cool, but like my voice for every generation. And so then I ended up at a men's conference that you were at. And I think you're sitting next to Micah Mack.
Yeah, it was.
Wait, yeah, Micah's been on the podcast. And who else was there? I don't know.
All I remember is I came around the corner and it was Pastor Josh and Carson Wentz.
Oh.
And I was like, Carson Wentz is here?
Yeah, that's so funny.
That's great.
I got to see him for like, that's so funny.
He's been here before too, right?
Yeah. I mean, Carson came out of this like community and his mom is involved here. And I remember that was so funny because I hadn't seen him. I knew he was there.
Yeah.
And he comes walking out and he was sitting near me. And so we were talking. And I think the guy that was hosting him thought that I was just some like super fan.
Yeah, trying to get a quick selfie or something.
Yeah.
Some merch sign.
Like had no idea that we were actually friends. So we're just sitting there talking. And Carson's actually the one like continuing the conversation. And I can see the host is like
eyeing you up?
Like eyeing me up, getting annoyed with me. And I'm like, I don't think he knows. So it's kind of like a semi-awkward.
Well, when I was talking to you, your host was doing the same thing to me. He was like, dude, he's like, back off, Pastor Josh, dude.
I didn't even have a host. No, I did. I had a great host, actually. He was great. But I remember, because I had just seen some of the stuff you're posting and I wanted to be connected to you because I wanted to be friends, honestly. And then I was hoping one day you'd come to North Dakota.
Come on.
Because I just love bringing outside influence into our church and just like a different voice than people are used to. And so, it was just a great moment.
Yeah.
And meeting you and getting to know Micah more. And now you guys have both been here. Yeah. So it's cool. I'm pumped about Way Church. I think you guys, it's just exploding. I know it is. And I think you guys have the faith to just see it do way more and greater things, and even coming off the road now and being around Nashville and reaching that community is so cool to watch. So
thank you so much.
I'm only angry that I haven't been there yet, but at some point
not yet,
we'll get down there. So
thank you, man. It's an honor. Look up to you more than you know.
Thanks.
And I hope this stays in, but your humility is incredible. Like being here and getting to walk around and hear your staff talk about you and your family. When I met you, you gave off like, I have no idea what I'm doing energy, like not like from like what you said, but just like your posture of humility. And then I get here and I'm like, this is one of the biggest, healthiest churches in America. And I'm just really grateful that you chose to be humble instead of what you could choose to be. So.
Yeah. I actually got the advice. I don't know if I've ever really shared this, but here we are. So I got the advice, and maybe it was a prophetic word from somebody who said, God is going to do something really, really special at Evangel, but don't feel the need to go bring outside attention to it.
Wow.
Just let God do it. And
That's
so
awesome.
I've always just tried to carry that, like,
it's amazing.
And I went to enough pastors' conferences where it was like, who are you?
Right.
Where are you from? And then I say North Dakota and their eyes start bouncing for other people. And then it's like, how big is your church?
Yeah.
And Jenaye and I kind of got to a point where we're like, we don't have anything to lose and anything to prove.
Yeah.
You know, like God is going to bring the people around us that need to be around us.
It's amazing.
And I actually love that. It's why I love North Dakota, because the people that are for real will still come.
Yep.
And they'll still be a part of it. And as we say in North Dakota, the weather keeps some of the riffraff out. So
come on.
It's true
Amen.
both ways. Yeah. So yeah, it's great. Appreciate you. Yeah,
Love you, Pastor
so grateful
Josh.
that you're here. We have to end this though, because there's college football to be watched.
Come on.
I mean, I
Go
think
Dogs.
we're cheering for Alabama. Right? No, I'm kidding. I actually do not like the Tide, so I don't even know if they're playing today.
They're playing right now.
Not good. We got an Auburn fan and a Georgia fan.
And my wife is an Alabama grad, so she's probably watching.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And you guys are civil in the same house.
Most of the time.
Wow. Well, except on Saturdays.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Love you, Noah.
Love you too,
Thank
man.
you for
Thanks
being
for having
here.
me.
And thank you guys for listening. That's all I'm going to say. Thanks for being here. We love you. Appreciate you. We'll see you next time.